can continue this later if you've got a bit of time, Sam.
Yeah.
I had planned to be on with you guys for about an hour or something, give or take. So I don't know if that's too long or not long enough, but that's sort of what I had in my mind. But I'm flexible, so whatever. I don't know if y'all have a time limit in mind, or if you just sort of let the momentum of the discussion dictate. But
yeah, we usually do that, and I think we're actually live now.
We are live. Sorry, guys, I hit the button and then I was like, "Oh, we're live." But yes, we were having a very interesting conversation about comedy and self-delusion, and then of course it, as always, circled back to Lorne. So we thought it'd be time to say hello to you all in the chat and welcome Sam Pendleton, the Pope.
Oh, thank you.
And of course Andrew is here again.
That was like, it sounded like dead disappointed. It's like, we've got Sam Pendleton. Oh,
and Andy.
Well.
And Andy. So I'm very pleased to welcome Sam here because we've never had him on to talk to us, and we had Bass Shaman last week. So we're going through like the founders, the founding forefathers of TCAP. Or, well, two of them. So before we really get into it, because some people might not know who you are at all, Sam, and I wanted to ask, like, how did you come up with being the Pope? Was that, like, allocated to you or self-titled?
It was. Yeah, it was. I, first and foremost, good afternoon, evening, morning, as the case may be, to all of Adam's listeners and audience. I am Sam Pendleton. I'm a lornographer. And to answer your question, you already mentioned him, Shaman, the bass shaman. The bass shaman is actually the guy that bestowed upon me the moniker of Pope, and that's important because back in the day there were a few people who used to sweat me a little bit and said the level of ego in this guy to call himself the Pope. So just to set the record straight, if I may, for those who are listening, I did not christen myself the Pope, and wouldn't have.
Nathaniel Trevor made a video slagging you off about that.
Yeah, he did, and so that everybody understands, the shaman was the one who was kind and.
Well, even if you had self-allocated it, I wouldn't have held it against you. To be honest, it's like.
Yeah, I don't think if anybody thought you did that for some kind of ego trip, then they clearly don't know what lornography is about.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, guys.
In fact, who would be jealous that? Oh, damn it! He's named himself the Pope of this paedophile's religion before I did. For fuck's sake!
My thing is, if somebody decides to give themselves a title, how much value does it have? And just give yourself a better one if you're that pissed off. And call yourself the Emperor or something, right? The Emperor's better than the Pope, right? Or call yourself God. But I, as far as the fitness of a title like that for me, I'm a bit of a hack in the community in that I don't contribute nearly as much as the only reason that I'm perceived by some as a stalwart or a plank owner, a founding member, is because I've been in it for so long. But in terms of the level of contribution, the amount that I contribute to the community, it's so far below what someone like Shaman has done for the community, or somebody like Ember. All these people that have been real pillars in the community. So I enjoy it. I appreciate it. I always love it when people are make me feel good in that way. But and it's very humbling. But most of it's undeserved. I'd say my biggest contribution is just helping to stoke the flames when it was in its infancy.
Didn't you get hold of the interview though?
Yeah, that was me. What I did is I finished the work that a guy called Honky Magoo. Some of y'all will remember that name from long time ago. He's an unsung hero in the community, first rate, and he had started the process of looking into how to acquire the interview. And I don't remember why it stalled on his end, but I was so interested in getting it that he told me what he knew about the process, and I did my due diligence from that point and finished what he started, basically. So even the interview was really a joint effort, and and to broaden the scope from lornography to TCAPism, when we look at how much material has been gained on all these different predators, it really dwarfs my contribution in that sense. Because the one, it took me 6 or 7 months to get it. I mean, it took forever. It took a bunch of letter writing, and I had to put a little money out and things like that to get it. And but then when you look at all these interviews that have surfaced since, it's like, man, I just, I thought it was kind of a big deal to get that one interview, and then now we got 20, 30, 40, 50 interviews. But it's great. I think it's wonderful. It just shows how exponentially a thing like this can grow when a community springs up around it, and everybody gets involved and people are committed to it.
And there were some amazing moments in that interview. I think I remember a video. It might have even been on Lawn Radio, Sam, where you said when you got that interview, didn't it get delivered or something, and you felt it was like Christmas morning or something?
Oh man, yeah. I was traveling, and I don't remember how. No, I know what it was. I was traveling, so when I came home, I was on no sleep. I've been flying and driving all night, and I got home and this and that. And I was going to sleep. I checked my mail, and I had the package finally after all these hoops that I had jumped through, and I was so excited. And I want to clear the air on this, because there's about 10,000 comments on that video that are some variation on the joke that my left ear really enjoyed this or something like that, because there's the audio feed only comes through one channel. So let me just say that the reason that is the case is because that's how the audio is on the original file they sent me, and I was so excited to upload it when I got it. I didn't want to process it. I didn't want to do anything with it but get it up. And in my haste to do so, I failed to check to make sure the audio was good on both channels and things. So, yeah, and Shaman put out a remastered version, which is excellent. But I was so excited. And that was really when my interest in Lorne was at its absolute peak, where I was reading a little bit of the chat log every couple of days or something like that, and I was going to the videos every day to see what comments were being left and that sort of thing. So it was like Christmas morning. It was thinking back on it, I can remember well the feeling of excitement and anticipation and euphoria. And I sent messages as soon as I put it up. I sent messages out to everyone that was in the community at that time. That it had come, because people knew I was trying to get the footage. Everybody knew I was scrambling to try to get that video.
Would you say your interest in Lorne has waned?
Yeah,
in
more
recent
my
times.
interest is pretty low. I'd say it's where it was post contact, but pre therapist, because obviously when first contact was made, that was a watershed moment in the community's history, and there, we all know about everything that went on in that year. After that, and there was this lull, this period, the quiet period, where there really wasn't a whole lot going on. There just wasn't much to say or much to talk about. And even after the Ramona stuff started, I wasn't particularly interested in it because, for me, apart from the narrative, Lorne is not a particularly interesting person, and my interest in it has always been a function of the social justice aspect. I don't really like that term. I think vigilante justice works better. Vigilante aspect of it in terms of holding him accountable, and of course what it does for the community. And the Ramona saga was very well done, and it was obviously a lot of people put a lot of time, effort, and energy into making that happen. But it wasn't until I had the opportunity to participate that my interest was piqued again. But there was that extended period where I was really fascinated with the whole thing. And in pre-contact Lornography's heyday, for fun, I would search his name on YouTube, and there would be 5, 6, 7, 8 new videos every single day. Shaman was putting up 2 or 3 a day sometimes. Crank Cinema was putting up a new video every day, and Nathaniel Trevor was putting up new video every day. And then you had outliers that would produce videos piecemeal, and it was just there was a surfeit, a glut, almost an excess of content. It was really magical. what made it so magical was that it was so organic. There wasn't any precedent for it. It was just a bunch of people that shared this interest and recognized the comic potential in it, and everybody was trying to entertain everybody else. It was really neat.
It was the mystery as well that got me, because at that time I was an observer rather than when I did videos,
Yeah.
and I was just amazed. I think the thing that got me is I couldn't. It was so liberating to realise that so many people had the same interest in Lorne that I did, because I remember watching the initial show in the UK, and he stood out really,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh my god, who is this guy? And I kept Googling him, and I realised that there was a community based around him, and I thought, I'm not quite as crazy as I thought I was for being quite obsessed with this guy.
Yeah.
And to see all these people make these videos and have the same interest as me in such a niche way, and he's still not very well known. Well, he's not well known at all, is he? But it was just like, oh my god, it was quite an amazing kind of moment, that. But
that was what it did for me too. That I was I had a similar experience to you. I was in graduate school at the time, and my schedule was all over. I would pull all-nighters and stay up writing and researching all night and that sort of thing. And so I had weird hours, and I would eat. I would just eat my meals at my workstation. Sometimes, my little study that I had set up in my house, and I would need something to watch or listen to, while I'd eat. So I found, I learned about TCAP at that time, and the show was still airing, first run at that time, and his segment stood out to me, and I forgot about it for years, but came back to it years later. But his segment had stood out to me then, and it stood out to me when I checked him out again. So there's, and I think that's the purest entree into Lornography for people that discover it that way, because his segment isn't particularly compelling, except when you recognize the emotional distinction of it, the way that he reacted, and the bit in the chat log about I love you and want to marry you after 6 days and this sort of thing, and when you combine that section of the chat log with his reaction to finding out that it was all fake, you recognize instantly this guy had a real emotional response here, and it's quite a departure from what most of these freaks bring to it, which is just, they're after one thing. They're trying to get their little pencil wet. Forgive my crudeness. It's low hanging fruit for them. But this guy had a real emotional connection, and that immediately stood out to me. And they're not only because it was obviously had such gravity for him, but because it's so unusual to see that with these guys.
Do you think that makes him
interesting? Sorry.
Morally, do you think that makes his crime worse or better, if that's possible?
Oh, well, as far as the criminality of it goes, I don't think it matters. But as far as what it says about him, as commentary on his character, I think it reveals a deeper brokenness in him than for most of these guys. I think you have to be supremely broken to be willing to hurt a child, but there are different ways for us to be broken and sick. I think his sickness is more profound, because it goes back. I think that 37-year-old Lorne wanting to mac on a child is a function of what happened to 12-year-old Lorne and 6-year-old Lorne, and that it probably isn't the case for most of these guys. For most of these guys, they just are thinking with the wrong heads, to quote that one dude, Richer. So as far as the criminal, the legal issue, I don't think it's a component. But in terms of the ethical stuff, it's different and more. I think it makes it more dangerous.
Okay.
Because it's
sorry. Funky Jones, I stole a toy from 6-year-old Lorne. Do you know what? I don't know, you wouldn't have heard Sam right, but we kind of did a stream. It might have even been with Bass Sharman, and we said that the turning point for Lorne's downfall could have actually been when Bunky stole his toy. Because his best friend stole his toy and his dad didn't do anything about it. That might have been the catalyst for the downfall.
Well, it was one of them. I don't know that you can ever parse the issues like the ones Lorne has down to a singular event. But that's probably emblematic. The fact that he goes back to that so readily 40 plus years later is pretty telling in terms of the gravity that it had, and I certainly would agree that it was crises like that one that set into motion the events that produced what we have today. So yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, it probably was as important as any other singular episode in his early life to creating the issues that he has. I agree with that. I'll roll with you on that one. Yeah. It's important for people to understand that his approach to children and sex, and sexuality, and all the rest of it is just a manifestation of deeper issues.
It's something we always talk about, but I want to know your opinion on it, Sam. Do you think Lorne is an opportunist or a child molester? To try and
that's a great question, and I think the answer is that if we put opportunism and pedophilia or herbophilia or hebophilia, whatever, on opposite ends of a spectrum, he's somewhere in the middle. I think he obviously has a proclivity toward youth, and I think a lot of that is a function of his self-image. He wants to feel like he's a young man. He certainly doesn't. He fights every day against the reality that life has passed him by, and he's one of those guys that is simultaneously afraid of dying old and alone and is on a rocket train to that end. But I say generally he's an opportunist. So for a guy who A, wants to feel young, and B, takes advantage of situations when he can, it's the perfect storm to create a pedophile. But I think that if he had the choice between Kayla and Amanda James, a grown woman, a mother, and a little girl, he would probably take the little girl.
The thing is, as well, this is pure speculation, but you can't. When people say if Kayla was real, it's kind of silly because you can't say it's a bit like saying what if Peter Pan was real. But if he'd have had that opportunity to go through with what he tried to, I believe he would have made him a monster. I don't think he's a monster, but it would have made him become somebody like a serial predator. Do you get where I'm coming from?
I want to ask this to both of you. If Kayla had said no, do you think he would have forced himself on her?
I personally don't believe so.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think one of the most comically tragic aspects of his case is the what if that didn't happen, because I don't, my thinking is he obviously hadn't thought his plan through far enough to allow for the probability that he would have a little girl who is going to react like a little girl in a very perilous situation. No, I don't think he would have raped her, but I think he would have tried to manipulate her into. He would have done the same thing he does with everybody. He would have started to cry and talk about how hard life has been and so on and so forth, and gotten.
What kind of person just cries all the time?
He might have been the first guy in history to try to score pity sex from a 13-year-old. I don't know. We've all been in relationships where we know how to manipulate the other person into, maybe giving it up when they weren't in the mood or something, because we needed it at that moment or something. But I don't know that I don't know how predisposed a little kid is to pity sex.
Do you think if Derek had come in the back door, Lorne would have run out the house?
That's a weird thing to think about, isn't it? What in the world would it? I would think I want to give Lorne enough credit, not because I like giving Lorne credit, but because I want to give him like basic human credit that if he had been in a situation where he's trying to get it on with this 13-year-old girl, and then this little boy comes in, and he realizes that his competition here, that his rival in this situation is a little boy, that maybe he would have had a moment of clarity where he recognized there's something very wrong with this situation when my competition is a little boy. Because that's got to be one of the most emasculating things I can imagine happening is that you're trying to fight for the love of this delicate flower, and then you realize that you're just fucking with a couple of seeds. That would fuck me up. And I would whether he was sufficiently less demented than he is now to be able to have this a moment of clarity and see the absurdity of that situation.
Do you think he's become worse with age? When you say he's more demented now.
Yeah, I think there are more layers, more strata between the root issues, and so I don't know that it's. Yeah, I think he is. I have to say that he is. I think if you're further removed from a place where you can get healthy, then you got to say that's worse, right? Even if he were the same guy, but he were just the same guy 10 years later, so he's got 10 more years of, the thing about mental health, about mental sicknesses, about those things, is that they really are. They can become organisms unto themselves. It's almost spiritual in the sense that when we don't address those things over time, they become organisms unto themselves that can strive for their own survival and existence. They become automatic. It's almost as though we're not
their own entities.
Right. And so for Lorne, he's under the control of these entities, to put it in a weird pseudo mystical way. And so what happens to any organism when you give it 10 years? It gets bigger and stronger. So in that sense, he's worse. It's the same issues.
What we were talking about earlier that springs to mind is one of the reasons Lorne can't accept responsibilities. Well, there's a number of reasons, but before he went into the chat log, he wouldn't have even realised he had attractions to children, and he still doesn't realise it now. That's the ironic thing. So when he went in there and he got sprung,
I'm not a fucking sex offender.
Exactly. But he doesn't see himself as being a child predator because he doesn't have the self-inquiry to realise what his proclivities, as you say, are. So that adds weight to this lack of responsibility. And it said it all in one of the Ramona calls when Ramona said, "You need to stop abusing me," and Lorne said, "It's your fault for not telling me to stop abusing you."
Yeah.
And that just hit home even more so with me, that this guy doesn't have any ability whatsoever for responsibility, and that is one of the main that's the one of the main makeups of Lorne. If he didn't have that, he wouldn't have become the person that he is.
There was a quote that came shortly after that was, what was it? You don't take responsibility, Lorne. Well, no one else does. It's just,
Well, I strongly believe that Lorne's root issue, the singular issue of his life, is that he basically believes he's worthless. He doesn't have any self-worth.
Yes, of course.
And that's a foundational issue for most people that have that issue. Have that issue because they learned that very, very early in life. So but that's underneath all these strata of Lorne trying to convince himself that he is worthwhile, which is what a lot of people who have that issue do. And so where we're at with it now, he's self-conditioned to automatically invalidate any notion that he's a bad person or that he has flaws. Now, of course, we all have flaws, and we recognize that we make mistakes in this sort of thing and that sort of thing. But there's a big difference between saying I made a mistake here and saying that I wanted to rape a little girl, right? Nobody, I mean, who in the world would want to hear that said about themselves? So, which is, by the way, why I chose that particular verbiage so many times as a therapist, because I know that's got to hit him deep.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds terrible. So he's self-conditioned to that when you encounter an idea like that, you've got to find an explanation for it that doesn't come back to I am actually this thing that I don't want to be, and so it has to be the case that it wasn't about the fact she was 13. It was about what Amanda James did to me and what my brothers and sisters did to me,
and what, he didn't get his mac and cheese. Did you see the video, Sam? About when he explained away the fact that he was messed up at the time to the fact that he didn't get certain meals from his siblings.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you mentioned it in the therapy session.
Yeah, we talked about it in one of the sessions. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Kind of went, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that, Lorne. If I had been through that, I'd also want to rape a 13-year-old girl.
Yeah, and this is what I find interesting about that is Lorne is a guy that is not terribly deep or profound, but he really thinks that he is. So he'll key on these stories, like this story with the macaroni and cheese, and he thinks it's profound because it's not what he's trying to say in his awkward and clumsy way. He's not talking about the mac and cheese. He uses that story because in his mind it's a perfect embodiment of the treatment, of the way that his siblings treated him. So it's not really about, but it's funny to us, of course, because he makes it about the mac and cheese because he's an idiot. But for Lorne, what that's really about is he's trying to show you this is how these people treat me, and he doesn't know any other way to do it than to use a poorly constructed analogical anecdote from his life about the mac and cheese. It's similar to the deal with the pedophile where he wanted to go after the perverted justice guy, and he said if you rearrange the letters in his name, it almost spells pedophile. Yeah, I don't know. Y'all heard about that? You remember that?
No, I haven't heard about that.
And like that, the guy's real name almost spells the word pedophile. I forget his real name.
It wasn't like Peter File.
No, but that's a nice IT crowd reference for those who picked up on it. But it's along those lines. Like I don't remember what the guy's name is, but the letters they don't anagram to the word pedophile, but they have some of the same letters. And in his mind, in Lorne's mind, that's significant somehow, which is retarded. It's sort of like if I said, well, Sam backwards is M-A-S, which is almost mass, so I should call myself the Pope. It doesn't make any sense at all. But in Lorne's mind, it's a near analogy, it's a near anagram, which is close enough for him to, I don't know if I'm making my point very well, but the point that I'm making about the mac and cheese story is just that, to his way of thinking, it's a poignant illustration of the way that he's treated, and that's why he tells that story so often. It's not because he's literally still pissed off 12 years later about some food, but it's that it embodies the way that those people treat him. It's that victim mentality. He's a victim, and he wants everybody to know that he's a victim, and that whatever mistakes he makes are a function of his victimhood.
Well, that brings us nicely on to talk about your role as the therapist and for people in the chat who are unaware, Sam had direct contact with Lorne during the Lorne and Ramona saga. Did you plan what you were going to say to him in those roles, or was it all on the fly?
No, it was the closest we ever came to game planning anything, to pre-gaming anything, was Ramona and I talked once about what I was going to say. I was going to romance her, and I had all these slick lines I was going to use because we knew that would piss him off. That was as close as we ever came to it. But no, it was all very extemporaneous. The first time we did it, I got an email on my phone from Ember about 20 minutes before that first broadcast, and she said, "We need a therapist. I said, "I'm in." And I recognized an opportunity, and this is what I've always said about the therapist thing I saw an opportunity to try to be a mouthpiece for the community, because there's so many people in this community who have so many things that they would like to say to this guy, but will probably never get the opportunity for. And I saw an opportunity to say those things on their behalf, and that was exciting to me. And but you can tell, that. I always describe the calls as like 6 hours. It's like an hour of good content spread out over a 6 hour recording is how I always describe them. And that's just the nature of improvisation. There's a lot of repetition. There's a lot of dead air and things like that.
It's still interesting to listen to, taking that into account, though. It doesn't really get... I've listened to it recently because obviously you were coming on and that, and it's fun. It's fun to go back to. And although you are... some of what you say is correct with the fact that there's better bits than others, I don't think it ever gets too boring. You're always interested. I think it's because of the anticipation of what Lorne's going to do, because he's so unpredictable.
I always just, there were so many people that were critical of the Ramona thing, and I see, I made a video of it, I think, and I know we talked about it in one of our ethics symposiums, but I said I see both sides. I recognize that, I don't do this. When I did The Therapist, it wasn't without misgivings as far as the morality of it and that sort of thing. But at the least, you can say that there was nothing else on the internet like it. It was wholly unique.
It was amazingly unique. To think that we'd obsessed about this guy for years, and then suddenly this community was having a direct impact on his life. It was like nothing that had ever happened before.
All right. Yeah. It was. I don't know that there's ever been anything like that anywhere on the internet, and that's saying something because everything's on the internet. But for that reason, I think people have to, and were, for the most part, understanding and forgiving of the fact that there's a lot of repetition and there's a lot of dead spots, but it's worth it. It's kind of like. When you watch a video or where there's a fight at the end, and it's like 8 minutes of build-up for 20 seconds of swinging, but the build-up is in its own way fascinating because that it's real and it's unscripted and it's organic, and you're in your mind you're exploring everything that's going on beneath the surface that's leading up to this thing, and there was a lot of that with the Ramona stuff.
It's like a reality show, but there's so much drama just because of who Lorne is and the way he acts, which kind of makes it hilarious at the same time.
Yeah, to think that we went from, what made pre-contact pornography so great for me, so entertaining for me and satisfying and so great for a lot of people, is that it was all speculation. We had no idea where this guy is, Tix, the proprietor of the temple, for those of y'all who don't know,
the temple of
T-Capist, put it best when he said, it's like you guys are sitting around imagining him sitting in his squalid trailer, watching one video after another, crying harder and screaming, "Oh God!" louder each time, and that's exactly. And he was kind of trying to bust our chops when he said it, but that's exactly what it is for me. I said in retrospect, that's exactly what the appeal of it was for me. The idea that, okay, what video can I make today that he'll probably see and will probably piss him off and hurt his feelings, and that was the challenge. And I think that Crank Cinema, one of the great Lornographers, tapped into that better than anybody else did, because his videos were so caustic and self-referential, and that guy, I think, had a better
Crank Cinema made was it Lorne and Dustin McFetridge go on a date together?
Does Lorne and Jeff Stacey go on a date?
That's it. Sorry, yeah.
I like the ones that he does where he says like, Lorne's the 10 dumbest things Lorne's ever said, or something like that, and it just makes you spot on. It highlights everything that we find appealing about his character. It demeans him in a way that you imagine him watching it, and when you're watching that video, you are trying to anticipate what Lorne's reaction to it would be.
Right, exactly right.
It makes it doubly entertaining. You're also getting entertained because it's expressing how you feel inside about the stupidness of Lorne, but you're also imagining how he would react to it. And there's also another element of, would this make him realise how stupid he is? When the lawsuit ones, what was it? The 10 most cringeworthy things he said in his lawsuit.
You nailed it.
And he says it in that computer voice. It's like the complainant, or not, he said, the defendant said no on several occasions. It's like, no, he didn't.
You nailed it. Everything you just said perfectly embodies the appeal of pre-contact pornography, at least for me. But I think for most of us to some extent. That's I couldn't have said it any better. And
do you think contact affected the community as a whole in a more positive or negative way?
I describe contact as necessary, and in the sense that it's necessary, it's irrelevant whether it affected the community positively or negatively. It's like the sun rising. Is the sun rising going to be good for me today or bad? It doesn't matter. It's going to happen. Personally,
why was it necessary, Sam?
Because a question has to be answered, and ultimately, pre-contact pornography was a bundle of questions, and we were either going to keep making these videos for years and years and years, and Lord only, I can't imagine what pornography videos would look like today if we'd never made contact, 4 or 5 years later, 3-4 years later. But we were either going to keep making these videos, or somebody was going to lay themselves at the sacrificial altar, so to speak, to find this guy at all costs. The curiosity the collective curiosity burned too bright.
Can I draw a parallel with, let's say, I'm sorry to mention this, Adam, but I've got to do it in every video.
It's fucking Star Wars.
Sorry. But if we'll have a look at the Han Solo movie, which was the backstory of Han Solo, and some people are curious about it, that mystery was better as a mystery. I'm not saying that I'm right in what I'm saying, and this is just I'm just putting it out there, but the mystery is sometimes more alluring than when we realise. So when it disappears, you lose something special. So
that's a very good point. That's a good point, and it gives me an answer to the question, the question that you asked a minute ago, which is this. I would say, in terms of the content, we definitely lost the magic, but in terms of the character study, obviously it's exponentially richer. So.
Yeah. I mean, I've been labelled a hypocrite, and it might be right. I've obviously made my point clear. I wasn't sure it was the right thing to do, but maybe we can talk about that in a bit. But, with regard to the sort of mystery thing, it kind of... It was... Yeah, I've kind of...
It's interesting. You know what? It makes me rethink what I just said about... I think one of the reasons that pre-contact pornography was so special is because there was a delicate balance of reality and imagination. We knew enough about this guy to create scenarios in our minds, but they were based on reality. And in the sense that obviously post-contact pornography is all about the reality of Lauren Armstrong, it's worse for the magic of pornography.
I think you just hit the nail on the head there, Sam, because if you think about it, the chat log contained everything that we could have possibly, bar a few things that we learned in the calls, but just look at the amount of information we got on Lauren's life from the chat log.
Yeah.
It was like you couldn't have had a situation where you could have learned more about him, because he opened up to Kayla. He thought Kayla was his salvation. So he opened up to her. And one thing that you can say from the chat log in its own twisted way is that he was very honest in what a lot of he said to Kayla. He admitted he slept on the floor. He said everything about that was going on at the time. He admitted the problems he had with his family. So that was a reflection on his state. So the information that we got there, we knew more about this guy than it was probably possible to know about anybody that had committed any crime. So that's why we had the opportunity to make so much content.
That's a very good point, and I agree. I have to agree. I think I agree with you. And as you said that, it gave me an analogy I don't play computer games. I used to when I was a kid, but I don't really play. I can't play them anymore.
Adam does
I love them.
continuously.
I don't admit. I don't mind admitting I love them.
The only exception is a sport. If I could play a sports game with other people, that's pretty fun. But I don't play computer. But when I was in the service, the guys would play PlayStation in the barracks all the time, right? And they would play these games like really interesting. I mean, that was I got out of it right when the games really started to get kind of complex and mature. So Metal Gear Solid was the big game, and it's a really cool looking game. So these guys would sit and play this game, but they would go by the book that tells you where all the items are and all the secrets are and that sort of thing, right? And I never could understand why anybody would go buy a game and then buy the book and just play through the game using the book. It wasn't like they would only reference the book when they got stuck. They would just have the book open in front of them and go from point A to B to C using the guide, using the book, right? Which to me defeats because the whole point of the game is to figure to solve the puzzle for yourself and have it, right? So
there's no sense of achievement in just
no mystery.
Yeah.
Right, no mystery. So pre-contact pornography is like playing the game the way it was meant to be played. We're all trying to, I found Clark's Milk website today, or I found a Facebook page.
Moments, weren't they?
Right. And post-contact is you got the book in front of you, or you got the developer sitting next to you. You got the, it answers all the questions, but it kills all the mystery.
What questions do you feel have been answered since the recent contact with Lorne, Sam? Because all I know is that he's still an idiot. I mean, in fact, I know a lot more about him. I know that he's entitled, has delusions of grandeur. But as you mentioned at the same time, maybe that something I'd never considered. You said he felt worthless. That's something I never thought, because of the way he talks about himself and bigs himself up. I honestly always thought in his mind he sees this, this successful country music star just waiting to break out.
This is why I've argued with people when people say he's a narcissist. Now, in some ways he is, but a narcissist loves himself. Lorne does not love himself deep down. Deep down, at the very most fundamental level, he hates himself.
Right.
Because otherwise, he wouldn't subject himself to the amount of humiliation he does. The fact that he kept going back to Ramona, even though he knew that you, as the therapist, were made up who was Sam Pendleton, because he knew who you were, even though he knew all that had been orchestrated, he still went back. Now, for a person to do that, it's like a domestic violence victim. And in a lot of cases, and I'm not having to go at people that have been a victim of that, in a lot of cases of domestic violence, they go back because they feel worthless, because they think that that's all that they are good enough to get out of life. Right. And that's the situation with Lorne.
I agree with that. Yeah, I don't think he's a narcissist in the true clinical sense of the word. There are very few true narcissists in the world, and it's worth noting that every child is a narcissist. Narcissism is the default state, but you grow out of it. But there are very few adult narcissists who are truly narcissistic in the world, and most of them most narcissists are accomplished to some extent. There are very few, very, very, very few true narcissists who have a life like Lorne, because at some point, narcissism really isn't a function of delusion. It's a caricature more than it's a delusion. It's a caricaturized self-image. So I agree. I don't think he's a true narcissist, but I do agree with you, Adam, that one of the most important things we learned about him is that he is how his sense of self-worth works. Because, one of the reasons he was so compelling to me pre-contact is because he seemed to really hold himself in high esteem. And how could and that was where so much of the comedy came, is how does this guy think so highly of himself? And we learned post contact that he doesn't, which is an important thing to know about him. But that's probably the biggest single takeaway in terms of understanding his psyche post contact.
To come back to the Lorne Ramona saga as a whole, obviously we did the ethics debate last year, and you were the neutral and very welcoming host. But
thank you.
As a whole, were you comfortable with all of it? Not excluding even your parts, because there were parts that I did at times felt uncomfortable with.
Well,
which I don't mind admitting.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
subject matter
fantastic it was fantastic entertainment, but at points, I think partially for me, it may have been born out of because it did become, as you said, quite repetitive.
Yeah.
But yeah, as a whole, were you comfortable with the trolling overall? Do you? I mean, I don't know where it stands now, or if we can call it trolling or whatever it is.
I'm trying to remember the name of that individual who was on the panel that we kicked off early. Dax. Yeah. I mean, I didn't like that they did that.
No, I felt quite partially responsible for that because Dax had contacted me, but I'd been on Do Not Disturb all day and wanted to.
Oh, let me, in case, I don't know that I've ever addressed this publicly before, but for the record, that was entirely my bust. Nobody's responsible for that. Nobody's to blame for that except me. And I was actually warned indirectly about that person, and I just hadn't been aware of all the back channel stuff, so I wasn't aware that this person was a troll. But that's on me for not doing my due diligence. So I don't think you're,
Well,
I'm
anyway, it's irrelevant, really. Yeah, I thought it was still a fantastic debate, even with Dax's contribution.
As well as it could have gone. There was a lot of extracurricular stuff behind the broadcast, interpersonal stuff among various members in the community that I think was unfortunate that was going on at that time. Which doesn't have anything to do directly with the debate, but I think that there were some people that were triggered by some of the interactions in the debate, and that's unfortunate. But considering the nature of the material and the subject matter and all the various personalities, I thought it went well, and on the whole, I'm comfortable with how it turned out. I think it was successful. It could have been better. That's on the moderator. That's on me, right? and I have meant to do another one, and maybe we'll try to do one this year, and hopefully it'll go better. But all things considered, I thought it was. I was happy with it.
Oh no, it was good.
It was a strange situation. Sorry, Adam, but if you think about it, we had a debate from these people in this community. Some trying to stick up for this child molester, and some trying to say he deserves everything he gets.
That wasn't my part in the debate, though. But I was on the team of.
It got a bit misleading towards some people who said, "Oh, we were trying to stick up for the predators," but that wasn't really the essence of the viewpoint that I held. It was like, is it not only the right thing to do morally, because morals are very subjective, but is it the best thing to do as a human being to goad this person? Because my stance has always been two wrongs don't make a right. And to interact with someone on a day-to-day basis and subject him to whatever you want to say, hardship, I didn't necessarily think was the right thing to do.
Well, for me, it was I think more the lack of clarity of where it was leading to. Like when you, for example, Sam, were being brought in, there was clear points. Like you were making points to Lorne about his life and how his mentality is so fucked up. But it seemed to like continue with and perhaps I'm wrong for feeling this way, but no clarity with the community of what was going on here. Was it a performance piece, or is it just an ongoing like psychological thing that will happen forever until Lorne dies?
Well, I've said this. I've said this a long time ago, pre-contact, that the thing that Lorne could do, not that he should be particularly concerned with me, but the only thing Lorne could do that would make me never participate in Lornography again would be to own who he is, acknowledge that he did what he did for the reasons that he did it, and that he was wrong, and that it's not because some other person did something to him, but because he wanted to fuck a child, and own that. It's ugly. It sucks to be that person.
Yeah.
It always sucks to have a moment of clarity where you realize that you've got an issue.
Well, people do it, don't they, Sam?
Yeah, and you've got to. It's the necessary first step to getting better.
This is why he can't grow as a person, because he won't admit that he was ever in the wrong with what he did. And if he could face that fact, maybe he could start looking at himself and making his life better.
Right. And if he were ever to do that, what would be what right would I have to be his opponent? Right? Like I'll never be his friend. I'll never love the guy. But if a child molester is trying to not be a child molester or trying to be better and deal with his issues, how can I hate on that? That's by definition the best thing that person in that situation could possibly do for his own sake, but more importantly for my sake, for the sake of humanity. So how could I hate on a guy that would be willing to say, this is what I am and I've got to get better? I couldn't hate on that. That would be wrong for me to do that. As I see it now, and the way that I've always, somewhat sheepishly defended my actions, is to describe it as vigilante justice. And I personally I think vigilante justice is the best kind of justice sometimes. I think this notion that the only justice that's legitimate justice is legal justice is a flawed perspective on justice, because it makes justice contingent on whatever governing body says justice is at that time. And those are temporal things. And the concept of justice has got to be in some sense universal, absolute, objective. If you don't like those words, there's other ones we can find. But in some way, justice has to be ubiquitous. It can't be contingent on what this group of people says justice is at that time. Because if that were the case, then we'd have to say that some of the travesties or horrible crimes against humanity that we've been guilty of in human history were justified in some way. That the Third Reich was right, that American slavery was justified in some way, and of course we know those things are as close to objective evil as we can find. So in some sense, justice can't be contingent on what this person or this government says it is, which means that vigilante justice becomes, in some sense, legitimate. Now, whether this instance of vigilante justice, whether pornography is legitimate vigilantism, is a separate debate. But that's the way that I am able to make sense of it for myself, and those actions in pornography that I support or that would defend or would say that those are at least understandable. That's my perspective on them. It's analogous to the guy in Town Square that's running around stealing everybody's goods. Nobody can get their hands on him. Well, if the cop can't catch him, I'll catch him. I'm not a cop.
This is what makes it kind of, because we can say, and I've said it a lot of times, does he deserve this sort of barrage that he was getting? But still. And there's a bit of a paradox, because he's still not the victim, because everything that happened with all the Ramona saga, the therapist saga, things that may be ongoing now, it's all his own doing. And the ridiculousness of his character is echoed in the ridiculousness of the community and the ridiculousness of the situation. So in other words, he's created his reality. Nobody else is responsible, but at the same time, listen, there's no point us dragging it up too much, but that's what made me question, is it the right thing to do? Do we have a human right on any level to subject Lorne to what he was subjected to? And people who say he's bringing it on himself, they're right. Of course he's bringing it on himself. He had a choice. He was being lied to.
Yeah, he could stop talking. He could have not made YouTube videos. I mean, that was an idiotic decision.
Oh, man.
But it was funny, though.
It was hilarious,
the amount of humour that is contained with a guy who tried to rape a child and thought he could make money out of a fan base that he believed admired him.
The shake weight and the porkless bite videos are masterpieces.
People walking round with a Lorne Armstrong.
Don't yell at me, I'm sensitive.
The actual ridiculousness of that alone, just the fact that he thought someone would want to buy it.
Someone did buy one. And then he never sent it, and they complained about it in the comments for ages.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of that in this community. People not getting what they paid for. But you're right. And to answer the question you asked a minute ago, Andy, I can't give you an unequivocal yes. And as I said earlier, the therapist stuff, was not done without some trepidation on my part. I can't. I like to debate and I like to argue and I like the polemics of it, and I can construct an argument, but in my heart of hearts, I don't know if it's right or not.
No, I don't. And I think it's all down to integrity of the person that's doing it. And if you acknowledge the fact that you may be wrong, then you're kind of free, really. I think it's when you stick to a certain point of view and you're rigid. I think that's when you become misguided. I've got my view and my opinion on it, and it's made me some enemies, but I'm open-minded enough to know that there are other perspectives.
Well, I think we were making our views and our opinions in real time, and that's the difficulty, because we got labelled hypocrites very often, which, well, we were, because it was huge entertainment, but at points there were points throughout it where I was like, this is a bit uncomfortable, or they're trying to, I feel a bit like Lorne's being forced to say something. Now, I haven't written the ethics code for when you do this kind of thing,
it's unprecedented.
Yeah, that's one of the and this of course is breaking off into philosophy, probably further than we want to go, but it raises the question about the nature of morality, because ultimately, what authority are any of us appealing to when we make our argument? I mean, on some level, it comes down to who can make the most compelling argument. But we all know that that's just a good rhetorician. That doesn't make a guy right or wrong. It just means that he can argue his point better. So I mean, to what authority do we appeal when we say that Lornography is right or wrong, or that the Ramona Project was permissible or not? Ultimately, each one of us. I mean, if we're talking about subjective morality, right? Positive ethics, then it's you got yours and I got mine, right? But what do you do with an issue like that when you're talking about if you take it a step further and you say there's a contingent within this community, or maybe on the fringes of it, that says Lorne is being victimized in the sense that you're being disproportionately cruel to him, or because they're like, as an example, there are people that want to submarine every job the guy gets, which I don't think is right.
No.
He has a right to make, I mean, because if you unpack that, you say, well, all right, so we can unpack. We won't do it here, but the point is, that's going too far. But some would say that it's not going too far, and
it is very difficult to say otherwise, because this is what I've always said, right? Lorne's position is almost undefendable sometimes, because he tried to do the unthinkable.
Yeah.
And when you try and say that there's another side to it, people can always say he tried to hurt a child and ruin their life, and there's very little you can say in defense of, well, not in defense, but there's very little you could say to change that and make it appear that there's another side to it, because it's quite possibly the worst thing that a human being can do is harm a child. So that's the difficulty, and that's why so many people have such strong emotions. Now, I know that there are people in this community, and I'm never going to mention names, that have been affected through some kind of abuse in the past. Yeah. There's also people who have come in the community that have bullshitted about it, which you're always going to get. So that the people that have this genuine past, it's kind of dishonourable to them to come up with a counter argument at the same time. So it's very difficult, isn't it?
Oh man, it makes me both appreciate and pity defense lawyers. I don't know why anybody would go into that line of work, because this issue that we're talking about, that seems to be this unsolvable ethical issue, dilemma or trilemma or quadrilemma, however many limbs there are to it, it's confounding. In Claude We Trust says in the chat, Lorne chose to participate in the Ramona Project. Everyone around him warned him. He refused to listen to them, and that's a compelling point. And if we think about it linearly in terms of that each act against Lorne, or each act of Lornography, is a point on the spectrum, a point on the axis. At any point, Lorne could act in such a way that he would obviate the next act of Lornography. That's true, and Claude Du Trust, you're right about that. But the counterweight question is, if the appropriate act of Lornography is to kick the guy in the stomach, and you chop off his arm or something instead, have you acted inappropriately? Because we're not just talking about a way of behaving or an approach to it, but it's about degree too. There's a big difference between making a video that makes fun of Lorne and calling his job 20 times every day until he gets fired.
This brings us on quite nicely because a couple of people asked earlier in the chat, what do you think of this Lorne Cornville guy that's going to his house and filming it? So I want to ask both of you this, Andy, because we've mentioned the channel, but we've not really stated an opinion on whether that's right or wrong. Again, we're not the authority, but it's cause for conversation, though.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, you go first, Sam. Go on.
No, you take it. I've been talking too much.
It's always good to hear you, Sam. But
Appreciate
I
you.
mean, it's not having any massive impact on his life. The reason why I was questioning the Ramona side was because it was influences his life day to day. And my fear was it would make him a worse person. This Cornville thing, he doesn't even know what's going on. He's being recorded. It's not great, but it's just. I mean, me and you were going to prank call him, weren't we? I don't have an issue with people prank calling him for a laugh. You know, if he feels a bit.
We did have quite a plot going, and then all of the saga came out, and we were like, okay, leave that.
Yeah, but I don't. I mean, it's just a recording, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, it was going to be a one-off call to just see if we could convince him that the teenage girls in England would love him as a country music star. That was our plan.
But, I mean, putting the legal issues aside, from what they're doing about, you know, we mentioned it before about, you know, his parole and the fact that he's still involved and always will be on, you know, on the register. Physically meeting him brings up a whole load of other questions that we haven't got time to go into, and it depends how far these people take it. Are they going to stalk him? Are they going to, you know, try and... I don't think they'll try and harm him, but, you know, let's not go down that route. What do you think, Sam?
Well, in summary, as you said, there's a lot to unpack, and it's beyond the scope of this broadcast. But that's probably one of the things we should address in some sort of ethics summit that we do this year, if we can put one together. In summary, I don't think it's good, and I encourage anybody out there who's intrepid enough to be considering a similar act to think twice about it. A violation of privacy is a violation of privacy. Whether the guy's a bad guy or not, it's still, from legally, it's still against the law to go film someone without their consent and put it online like that. And I don't think people should be doing that. And I hope that those who are will stop, and that those who are considering it will reconsider.
Yeah, I've got.
Do you think if Lorne went for one of his lawsuits against him, he might actually have a chance with this one? That's probably not a good idea, is it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's probably something he would consider if he thought there was a chance in hell he'd get something out of it. But I don't know what the protocol for something like that would be. But I think he's got grounds. I'm not sure how strong of a case he has. I don't. Maybe some lawyers in the crowd can tell us. But I think he'd be within his rights to act on it legally. I'll think. I mean, you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a little bit risky, I guess. Yeah, I never even thought of that. I just watched the videos and went, fuck, wow, Lorne's trailer.
I didn't think of the legal applications, to be honest. It only occurred to me when you mentioned it before, Sam. But, I mean, you know, we're only talking about, a few 20-second YouTube clips. Probably won't amount to prison, I wouldn't have thought.
No, I don't know what the legal recourse for him is, or what the legal fallout would be for the guy who did it. I wouldn't imagine there's jail time, but I don't know. But I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think it's. I think the question that each of us should ask when we think about producing some bit of Lornography is, what does this do to advance the community? You know, I mean, obviously, it satisfies a certain morbid curiosity to see what the inside of the guy's house looks like and so forth. See how he acts when he doesn't, when he's not trying to impress a girl, and so forth. But it's fraught with peril, in my opinion, and I don't think vigilantism has its limits too. And beyond all that, I'm not sure how that particular act dispenses any measure of justice to Lorne on Lorne. I think it's just kind of taking advantage of his gullibility and his low state of intelligence.
Sam, when you first started talking to Lorne, I wouldn't have thought you had any kind of spiritual enlightenment moments, but how did you feel after all these years of being, interested, even, slightly obsessed with this guy for bizarre reasons, like we're all guilty of? How did it feel to be in a position where you could pretty much say what you wanted? You were playing this role, and even listening to it was kind of exciting because you were the spokesperson for the community, and you did say things that we all wanted to ask him. And it's like I had a moment, I told you about this when we spoke last year, Sam, that point when you said, have you ever thought about the possibility that maybe you did want to do it? And at that point, when I was in the gym listening to it on my headphones, a song came on by Richard Ashcroft all of a sudden, which interfered with my Bluetooth headphones and started speaking about the truth. It was, and I keep having these moments. I was driving on the motorway today listening to the therapist thing, and Armstrong's Tools drove past. And then all these things keep happening to me, and I was jogging down the canal the other day, and someone in England had a Boston Reds cap on, exactly the same as Lorne. It was rare as hell over here. So I keep having these bizarre, profound moments. It's very, very spooky. But
if anyone thought about Lorne as much as you do, Andy, then they would see Lorne everywhere in
I
everything.
woke up thinking about it once, and at that point I thought, you need to get a life, pal. At that point
you thought I need to clean my sheets.
Yeah, I stopped reading the Lorneography as much as I did. But yeah, how did it feel initially, Sam? I've lost perspective on the question now.
No, that was a great. I'm glad you told that story again because it's a great story. And to answer the question, it felt great. It's very satisfying. As I recall, my thought process was just to try to do the opportunity justice. I don't know that I particularly did, but we had some fun. But I wanted to try to honor the opportunity, and it felt good to whatever haymakers I was able to land in there. It felt great, and it was really satisfying. It did feel like the culmination of something that I had been waiting to do for a long time, since I had discovered Lorne and helped.
Mentally, it wasn't really a challenge, though, was it? When he starts going, "Oh, you got your degree out of a box of Lucky Charms."
Well, my objective was to try to get a balance between getting him to be introspective and acknowledge some of the things that we were trying to get him to see, and to piss him off. I made a music video earlier this year about TCAP, and one of the lyrics is that we made him cry and we broke his heart and we upset him, and then he thanked us at the end of it, which was perversely satisfying because that's pretty mean spirited. I will admit to get some satisfaction out of busting a guy's balls and then he thanks you for it. But it was perversely satisfying. It was satisfying in the sense that it was Lorne Armstrong. So there was that. But on the whole, I'm glad I did it. It felt good. It's a little known fact that it's actually not the first time I talked to Lorne, and he didn't remember either. Back in the early days when Ember was first talking to him, I was brought on as potentially doing some editing for him. It was sort of I don't want to say it was a ruse to shake out some more writing from him so we could get some more of his writing, but that's pretty much exactly what it was. So I don't know. But and he and I had talked for 30 or 40 minutes, and he totally didn't remember that, which is pretty funny to me. It was about a year before the therapy stuff. But yeah, so to answer the question, it felt great. It felt it was satisfying. It brought the thing full circle for me, and I was happy to do it. And I have a question for you guys that's totally random, but now I'm going to turn the tables. I'm going to interview you guys. I want to know. Yeah, I want to know. Have you guys ever had a dream about Lord Armstrong? A sleeping dream?
I can't say I have.
I have, and this is God's honest truth, but I can't remember what actually happened, so it wasn't like a profound one where I met him on a cloud or anything.
Yeah.
But I think it was more about the community, but he was in it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does.
How about you?
Yes, I have had one dream about Lorne that I remember, and what I remember about it, and this is pre-contact, so maybe it was a little bit prescient in that it foreshadowed something that turned out to be true. In the dream, he lived in a rundown, squalid old trailer, and all I remember is that he was getting ready. He was standing in his bathroom in front of the mirror, getting himself ready. He was going to go out that night, try to pick up some girls or something, I guess. And I was standing behind him, watching him get ready. And I remember being supremely pissed off in the dream that he was so full of himself. He said, "Oh, I'm so good looking. I'm going to go get these, pick up a lot of girls." And for some reason, I was trying to convince him that he wasn't very tall, like that in the dream he had this self-perception that he was really tall. Women like a tall guy. And I was trying to tell him he's not very tall.
Isn't he quite short in real life though? He's what, 5'7"?
I think he's 5'8", right, or 5'9".
Okay.
I should know that.
Oh, that's about my height then.
I believe he's 5'8", and yeah, he's 5'8" because he said it real funny in the video. He's 5'8", which is not. I think average height is like 5'9", something like that. So I think he's maybe a little on the short side, but he's not freakishly short or anything. But I don't know why that. I could have banged him on so many things in the dream of you're ugly and bald and stupid but
that's not the worst thing to say.
Bold.
No, I was really pissed off that he thought he was tall, and for some reason.
Why?
The mind works in mysterious ways. I've just got another question for you as well, Sam. Right?
Please.
During any of the points where you were speaking to him as the therapist, was there any point at all, especially probably when you made him cry, where you thought, you know what, probably shouldn't be doing this? Did you have any of them moments where you thought maybe I've gone too far?
In terms of the mean stuff where I would insult him and stuff, I kind of was trying to play up to the crowd in those moments. So in those moments, I didn't really think about it in those terms. I was just trying to be as entertaining as I could. In terms of the stuff I said to him, the real stuff, when things got heavy, when we actually were talking about real issues, I don't think I ever went too far because I believe everything that I ever told him about himself, and I think it's all stuff he needed to hear. Honestly, there was a part of me that was hoping that he would have that sort of come to Christ moment and finally acknowledge the reality of what he is.
Epiphany.
And I was trying to get that out of him if I could. I didn't succeed, but no.
What about when you made him cry though, Sam? Was there did you feel any empathy for him or even sympathy?
I felt a little bit of empathy. I think it's natural for us to feel empathy when we see another human being in distress, and on that level, I did. But I felt exasperation for all the people in his life that must harbor frustration with him because they keep trying to get him to see the truth, and he just won't open his eyes up to it. And usually when a person breaks down in that kind of a moment, it's because they've come to the end of themselves. We talked earlier about how illnesses are organisms and people can build barriers. And usually when you see a person have a breakdown moment like that in that kind of situation, it's because you have found some hole in the wall, some crack in the barrier that they didn't prepare for, that they didn't see coming. And you're able to get past that barrier and just get to the real person, to the essential person that's behind all of that stuff. And I think that's what happened with Lorne in that moment. So I felt, and I've been there many times myself, so I understand how it feels. So I felt an empathy in the sense that I know how it feels to come to the end of yourself and realize something about yourself that's true and uncomfortable. But I didn't feel sympathy in the sense that I felt as though he were being done wrong in some way, because those moments, as painful and uncomfortable as they are very necessary in the process of getting healthy.
Yeah, and everything. Sorry, Sam.
No. I was going to say I thought I did him a favor in that moment, as weird as that probably sounds.
Yeah, because nothing that you said. I mean, sometimes I was like, you was saying he was trying to rape a child. And he did try. You didn't say he had. You said he tried. So there wasn't anything that he said that wasn't the truth. It was just somewhere along the line with the Ramona saga, there was a few moments where maybe he was being accused of things that he necessarily wasn't, like being racist and things like that. Them are the things that I didn't feel comfortable with. But obviously, you and Ramona between yourselves took him to the limits of where he was able to go. As you've already mentioned.
But he still didn't have an epiphany large enough to even make a change, which is it's not. Sorry, no offense, Sam. I don't think anyone's qualified to actually be able to do that. Even if we sat him down and he had a conversation with everyone who's ever taken an interest with him and tried to make him see himself, I don't think he would. But
I agree with that. I think he had some epiphanic glimpses, but a true epiphany is something that permanently changes one's perspective. And that still hasn't happened. So I concur.
Do you think it could?
I think it's possible. It's highly, highly, highly unlikely.
I agree.
I think he's too set in his ways now.
Yeah, I agree with that. In my experience, people like Lauren have those moments in their dying moments. I think most of us have a moment of total honesty with ourselves, but unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how much you enjoy learning and suffering, it probably won't happen for him until he's close to the end. But I hope it does, and it's not because I particularly care about Lauren having a good life we have, but because it's better for all of us, isn't it? I mean, if a bad guy turns into a good guy, that's better for all the rest of us.
Exactly. The world will be a better place. So was there anything that you found surprising? Did he surprise you in any way? Did you change your opinion of him? Did you think that he was a worse person than you even imagined?
No, unfortunately, he pretty much played to script in terms of what I expected from him going in, and that's to his detriment. But I wasn't terribly. No, he didn't really catch me off guard. The bit where he thanked me at the end, I thought was that call where we made him because he did get some legitimate counseling in there, in my opinion.
He did,
I felt like his thanking me was unexpectedly big of him. So I suppose the only surprise he gave me was a positive one, where he impressed me. He acted better than I would have expected him to.
I viewed that from a different way, Sam. When he said that, I viewed him as being weak because he didn't really believe anything that you said. It just came across to me like he was backing down because it's not really changed him, has it?
No, but I don't think that's a function. Here's what I think about, and this is going to sound egotistical a little bit, but what's new, right? of me. I really believe in the truth of what I said to him, and I think that and truth is always stronger than delusion when it's delivered properly. Which is not to say I delivered it properly, but it is to say that in that moment, I think he in those glimpse moments that he had that led up to that, I think he recognized the logic of what I was trying to explain to him. I do believe that. Now, I do think that there's an aspect of the thank you that was a function of him trying to please Ramona. He thought that it would probably make her happy if he acted humble and contrite, and that certainly was a factor. So there was a performance aspect of it that is distasteful, but.
I think you got to say what everyone wanted to say to him because you came in not as obviously Ramona had a role to play for a long time, but you came in just as a third party who was something of this kind of ongoing pantomime, and you were able to, like, the one person, it's like the Truman Show almost, like there's one person in it who thinks this whole thing's real, and you got to go and you see how badly he's acted. You were able to go in and say a lot of things that should help him, but he's
probably won't. Yeah, isn't it funny too that it's just as you describe it. It's like a Truman Show, but it's even more obviously fabricated than that, and he never picks up on it, and it sparked an interesting question that a lot of people discussed in those days about, does he know? Maybe he just knows and he's just lonely and bored and likes the attention, because how can anybody be falling for this? And I remember when Ramona and I pre-gamed before one of those calls, and I said to her, you don't have to call me Mr. Therapist, just call me Barry or whatever, but then she kept calling me Mr. Therapist anyway, and even in the call I kept telling her she didn't have to, but she kept doing it, and then I figured out what she was doing, because at first I thought she was trying to make the lines clear for his benefit, but I realized that what she was really, it was brilliant comedy, but very subtle. She was playing on the fact that he doesn't realize that this whole thing is fake. And she's making it comically obvious to him, and he's still not catching it. And I don't know Ramona, if you're out there listening, props to you. That was great comedy that I didn't catch at the moment.
I always got the impression that Lorne, even consciously, not even subconsciously, consciously knew it was all bullshit, but his desperation and his loneliness subverted any of that, so he was willing to pretty much go with anything. I mean, this is a girl who spoke to him we don't know, we're not privy to the details of the initial relationship, but any female that comes into his life, he's willing to fall in love with. Yeah. And we know that. We've got a proven history of that. And it just, pretty much anything that you would have thrown at him, he would have believed if he thought he could have won the affections of a female.
Well, one thing about delusion, and it's one of the things that makes it so dangerous, is that the distinction between truth and falsehood is less important than what it does for the person who's evaluating it when they suffer from delusion. So what I mean by that is, and this is sad, it really is, it's a sad commentary on that state of mental health, and we're talking about Lorne. It may be the case that it's less important to him that it's true than that it's vital in the sense that it's happening to him. Like he'll play along with it, delude himself a little bit, because hey, at least it means that somebody's showing him some attention. So I think you may be right, and that's sad. I mean, I'd say it's sad not in the sense that but it is sad. I mean, it's always sad to see somebody who's that sick and deluded be sick and deluded. So you may be right, and there may be some elements of that, and if that's the case, then it's a tragic commentary on how far these issues can take us adrift of where we should be.
Well, yeah, he is a one-man guide of how not to live your life.
Yeah, you should say that, because my next video that I'm going to do soon is what can Lorne teach us about how to live a successful life, and I was going to highlight the things that he teaches us not to do. So right. And I thought that might be funny, but it still interests me to this day. I don't think I'll ever lose total interest with pornography, because it's such an unusual. It's not just him, because all we've really done is talked about him as a character, as a person. But if we look at the overall saga from start to end, from let's just say the start of the whole pornography to where we are now, look at what's happened.
Yeah,
something new always pops up.
The inconceivability of it all is unbelievable.
Being interested in TCAP, or more specifically Lorne, is like being Michael in The Godfather. Every time I try to get out, they pull me back in.
Yes, and you guys are on point. And one thing that aspect of it that makes it so poignant for us, and I think this speaks to everyone in this community that's been a part of it, is not only is it this strange and fascinating and compelling um, uh, body of work, but we all contributed to it. It's our creation. Everybody that's been in the community that's contributed, that's participated in some way, even if it's just some funny comment that you left on a video that's memorable to somebody that they remember and laugh at from time to time when they think of it. You've helped build this thing. So in that sense, Lornography and even TCAPism in the sense of it being this community that has sprung up, it's ours. We created it. We're all stockholders, shareholders, so to speak. So it's personal to us.
Well,
mean,
speaking
me,
of comments as well, Lorne still does provide me with entertainment. I just go back to his channel and read the latest comments on his video.
Man.
But
and you know what? And that's like that. All that happened. He was at his most prolific in terms of video production at the point when my interest was at its lowest. And part of that was I didn't want to give the guy a view. You know what I mean? I still am not subscribed to him.
No, neither am I. No, I'd never subscribe.
Yeah, but going back now and reading those comments, holy Lord, is that a treasure trove of comedy? It's there's so much content for and for those of us that missed it in real time. The analogy is Breaking Bad is one of my favorite shows of all time, as it is for many.
We've got a lot in common.
Yeah.
Yes, such great. I mean, just a perfect television. But I didn't get interested in it until it was airing its 4th season. So for the first few months of my interest in it, I had all those back episodes that I could watch an episode anytime I wanted. I was like, these suckers wait until the next week to have to see the next episode, and I can just throw an episode on whenever I want to catch it. It was great. And going back to Lorne's comments, the comments on Lorne's videos is kind of like that for me, because I didn't keep up with any of that stuff in real time. So it's like this glut of content that I can just dive into.
Yeah, it's just I just like the ones that are straight to the point. Just the ones that say like, "Kill yourself, pedo."
We all have our different ways of expressing ourselves, right?
I would never write that, but I take a lot of joy in the other people that do write that. I'm not sure why. I mean, that's quite.
But it's so funny because me and you speculated it a lot, Adam. Is there a sex offender who's done what he did, who tried to make a YouTube career before? And do you know what? I don't think there actually is. And that's what makes the comments so amusing, because what you're laughing at is the fact that he thought he could make money and manipulate people out of it. It just is an unparalleled level of stupidity and naivety.
Yeah, the apotheosis of that, in my opinion, the best singular example of that, and I don't know if it was, I know that other people know about it because the joke gets thrown out from time to time. I don't think any media was produced on it, but there was a point at which he proposed to Ember the idea, well, let's say that let's make Mr. Penis a character that wants to protect children. And he was serious.
Or like a superhero, like his fucking penis and bollocks with a cape on.
Oh my god, how do we not know about this?
Isn't that crazy? And that's what, if you ever hear somebody say, you've probably seen it or read it or heard it, and it missed you because you didn't know about that. But if you ever hear somebody say, "Oh, Mr. Penis wants to protect children," that's what they're referencing.
Yeah. I heard about that. I heard the call, I think, with that in where he says Mr. Penis just wants to protect children.
I thought my interpretation of that was he doesn't remember inventing Mr. Penis in the chat log. So when people mention it, he thinks that's what people call him. So that's why I thought he thought that he was Mr. Penis. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you. He didn't think that, and I'll put something that some people may not know because it got lost in the shuffle. This is going back to like the brother Josh and Ethan days, so going back a little ways. But Mr. Penis is actually a nick, and by the way, well, this is what he claims. So it may or may not be true, but this is what he claims, and this is one of the things that contributes to the virgin debate, whether he's a virgin or not, is that Mr. Penis was actually the nickname for it that some other girl gave him. So that when he introduced it to Kayla, it wasn't like an educational aid for her.
Oh.
That was actually the nickname that some lady gave to it at some point in his life.
So where did Miss Vagina come from then?
Wow.
I'm guessing that's just that he either came up with that as a retort to whoever gave his junk the name Mr. Penis, or that maybe he just invented that corollary with Kayla and he said, well, Mr. Penis, I guess I might as well.
Miss Vagina is a natural suitor to Mr. Penis.
Yeah.
It is, but Lorne's not clever enough to think of that. You know what? No one else is having a conversation like this on the internet anywhere else in the world, are they?
I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't imagine.
At least we've hidden the penis deep in the middle of the stream, so the YouTube police might not go mental.
Oh man! Well, if somebody out there will report it. We all know there's that narcs and dime droppers abound in this community.
That's something I wanted to talk to you a bit about, Sam. If you obviously if there's anything you're uncomfortable talking about or anything, but this community, I mean, it has been a great bringing together a lot of people, but there is always I haven't been around from the start, and but I only hear rumors of things that have happened, like reading Temple of TCAP. It's a forum I quite enjoy, but you hear things like, why do you think that the TCAP, or well, is it the Lorne or the TCAP community more, but it seems to attract quite a lot of drama.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I think that drama is intrinsic to online communities. I'd say that's the biggest singular reason. Just in any online community, people thrive on anonymity and on the ability to cause chaos without being found out, being held accountable for it. I think that's the biggest single catalyst for why we see it, because it's not markedly different, in my opinion, from what you find in any online community. I'm not plugged into a lot of online communities, so I don't know, but it kind of, from what I've always heard from other people, it's kind of like everywhere you go, there's an element of troublemakers, rabble rousers that just want to cause havoc. That's my take on it.
Do you think there's an element of people in the community who want to protect Lorne? Do you think that's why a lot of the videos get flagged and taken down?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me to find out that he has friends or family members or just people that are sympathetic to him for whatever reason that act. I think that most of the people that do it on ethical grounds, it's more about the issue we were discussing earlier, which is vigilantism, is that defensible and to what extent? And I think there are people who say, no, this guy didn't deserve this, you're being cruel and this and that, and they act on that conviction. So but it wouldn't surprise me to find out that Tony or his buddy Tony or some guy, someone he knows, or some cousin.
I didn't put my hands on I put my hands on Tony. That was it.
I don't think those guys care enough about Lorne to do any of that. I genuinely don't think that he's got any true friends.
But he used someone else's kitchen for making his cooking videos, so he must have someone that trusts him to go in their kitchen.
You don't need to be like, if you're hanging about with people on the same mental level as Lorne, they're not going to be bothered about you using the kitchen.
What are you saying? He's just living on that. Did you ever see that documentary, Bottom, the Strangest Village in England?
No.
Oh, sorry. If anyone gets that reference, if you've seen it, that might be a bit like where Lorne lives. It's just a community of autistic people.
It's called Bot in the Strangest Community in England.
Okay, right. I shouldn't say this on air, but some of it is really funny. Like,
okay.
It's very interesting, but yeah, it's like a whole self-sufficient community, but everyone that lives there is autistic. Well, they have some carers and things in the houses, but like there's these two guys that got their own language. It's mental. But anyway, yeah, if you have time, check that out. I think it's on YouTube.
Okay, I've got it written down. I will check that out. I want to throw a plug out real quick for a documentary that I was surprised to find out that nobody in this community that I've mentioned it to has seen it. But it's in my opinion essential viewing for those of us that are in this community. It's called The Boy with the Henna Tattoo. Have y'all seen it or heard of it?
Oh, I can't wait. I'm already intrigued. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I'm going to put the name of it in the chat. It's a doc that I want to say the BBC did it, but I don't know. Anyway, it's on YouTube. The whole thing is on YouTube, and it's about a couple, a gay couple who adopted a little boy, who, as it turns out, were trafficking him for sex all over the world. And that's all I'll say about it. It's very dark and disturbing, and this and that. It's not a comedy, but it
doesn't sound like a comedy.
No, but it's intriguing. It's riveting. It's fascinating. They have an interview.
I'm looking forward to watching that. Maybe we'll do some videos about it soon.
It's right in the wheelhouse of this stuff, which is one of the reasons why it surprised me that nobody's heard of it. But it shows the process of how law enforcement. It documents how law enforcement was able to find the guys, and the lengths that these people go to, these child predator, these sex predator rings that exist all over the world and in the dark web, and how they operate, and the levels, the measures that they take to protect themselves, and how law enforcement was able to crack the case and find this kid. It's fascinating. It's really, really good. I think everybody who's interested in this subject should watch it.
That's definitely next on the list. Just very quickly, because we've been going a long time. So, have you ever seen Tall Hot Blonde documentary?
No, somebody mentioned it to me.
It's worth watching.
Okay.
It's brilliant. It's not very well known, and it's about, basically, it's one of the things that led us to be concerned about the Ramona situation. Is someone who gets involved in a online situation that gets out of hand, and there's a lot of collateral damage. And it's fascinating because it makes you realise how dangerous playing roles online and fooling people are. So it's one of the reasons we got a bit concerned about what law might do when he finds out the whole Ramona thing was bullshit. We were a bit concerned that, it was all speculation and that, but it just highlighted how potentially irresponsible it may be. But if you could watch it and give us, let us know what you think about it.
I've got it written down. I'll put it in my list of films to find and watch for sure.
But there's a lot of parallels with the Lorne saga within it, and when you start watching it and when you get to the end and about the revelation within it, you'll understand what we mean. And so anybody that is listening that hasn't, please watch it. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I've got it written down. I'll track it down and.
But make sure that you don't. They made a movie about it, a Hollywood movie. Some A-listers in it. Can't remember who. Make sure you download the documentary, not the feature film.
Okay, Roger that. Right on. I'm on it. Appreciate the recommendation. And I just did a search for the boy with the henna tattoo. By the way, the first link that comes up is the full documentary in HD, so it's on YouTube. You guys don't have to Netflix it or anything like that. It's right there.
Oh, great! If you could put it in the comments section as well as the live chat, and then I can go to it because
it's difficult. I tried to post it in the chat, and it won't let me post a link. But I will post it in the comments section of this video when we're done.
Brilliant.
Cool.
So is there anything else that that sprung to mind, Sam, about we've been digging up a lot in the last 12 months and everything that went on? Is there anything else? I mean, we've covered a lot.
Yeah, no, I think this was great. I enjoyed this discussion, and
one last question, Sam, before because you've got your ear to the ground a lot more than us. I heard rumours the saga continues. Can you confirm or deny that, or is that not?
I've heard that too. I really don't know. I sort of unplugged after the therapy stuff. I thought that there was one call that went around that Ramona and Lorne talked again after all that stuff went down like a month later.
There was a couple of calls that have been uploaded. You have to be really quick because they come up and go down very fast. There were some that I think I listened to a couple from February this year.
Oh, okay. That's probably the same ones I heard. As far as that's the last I've heard. I'm sure there's people that know more. It kind of seems like the Cornville thing that we were talking about before. It suggests that there's still people, trying to find out what he's doing, or there may be another Ramona by now for all we know. Wouldn't that be something if a few months from now a whole another Ramona saga happens?
Wouldn't surprise me.
It honestly wouldn't. You would think he'd learn, but he never will.
If there is anybody out there doing another Ramona, I'll be the therapist again. I can talk in different voices. You won't even know.
I'm being the therapist this time, Sam.
Yeah, I can't.
You've had your chance. You've had your chance.
I can't speak to him again because he just thinks I'm Edward Snowden.
Well, Andrew, I think you should be Donald Trump because I think he would be.
Oh dear.
You wouldn't have to change your accent or anything. I think he's such is the level of his.
Well, no, he did spot me when I told him that. He called me a fucking retard. That was one of the pinnacles of my life.
Damn. See, I remember listening to a call. How many calls did you do with him as Snowden? Just one.
Just one. It was only very, very briefly. I remember listening to it. I don't remember him calling you out though.
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah, no, he did almost straight away because they were talking about phone hacking, and that's how the information about Lorne had been leaked online. And then Ramona said like, "Oh, it's probably to do with Edward Snowden." And then I just came online and said something like, "Yeah, this is Edward Snowden here. We've hacked your phones." And,
that's so awesome.
And he went, well, he says something like, "Oh, what the fuck is this?" And I went, "We're very disappointed with you in Russia and China." And then he went, "You're not Edward Snowden. He doesn't have an English accent. You fucking retard." And I was like, "Okay, excellent. I have been called a fucking retard by Lorne Armstrong." So
called me a little bitch apparently. So we both had insults.
Yeah.
Wow.
But there's a sense in which just being acknowledged by that fool in this community is satisfying.
Yeah.
So yeah, if he tips his cap to you, and if he considers you an enemy, that's probably to your credit. That probably says something good about you as a person.
All right.
Well, we're all in that club, aren't we?
Yes, sir.
We have been going for an hour and 40 minutes, and it's quite late where I am, guys. So I think we're going to have to wrap things up. But I want to say a huge thank you to both of you for joining me for this chat. It's been enlightening.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for having me on. Appreciate y'all letting me jabber, and I really enjoyed it, and we need to do it again sometime.
Yeah,
yes,
it's been
absolutely.
great. It's stirred up some interesting points, hasn't it? It's, ironically, I think we've digged deeper into the ethics side of it than we did during the ethics debate.
Yeah, I think you're right. And if we do another ethics broadcast, which we will at some point, whenever the time comes for me to stop being lazy and put that together, we probably will. I think part of the problem, one of the problems with the one we did, was that the way that I framed the discussion was too binary. It's not, you're either on this side or you're on that, and it just doesn't work that way when it comes to ethics. And I think an open discussion is far more effective and edifying for listeners in terms of exploring these issues. And that's
still difficult to moderate, though. Due to the subject matter.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think my take on something like that is it's like if we would just all moderate ourselves, you know what I mean? Let's try to remember that we're...
Don't have Dax Desi on, in other words.
She's in the chat. She just said something. Do another debate, make it looser. Yeah.
He, then.
I don't know what the proper... So, Dax. I'm just going to say Dax.
Yeah. I don't think Dax really cares.
Brilliant.
But, yeah. Oh, sorry.
No. But thank you guys. I think I enjoyed myself, and hopefully y'all did, and hopefully our listeners did.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope you guys in the chat have enjoyed it. Remember to hit that like button if you have. And thanks for joining me, guys. Look forward, hopefully, to some kind of new debate with Sam soon. So, yeah, take care, everyone. Good night.
Peace, everybody. Bye, sweetheart.
Bye.